Welcome back to Better Conversations, the Life and Money podcast. I'm Patrice. When most people think about retirement planning, they think about investments, taxes, Social Security, and that one big question, do I have enough money? But what if the biggest factor determining whether retirement becomes one of the best times of your life has almost nothing to do with your portfolio? Eric, today you are challenging some traditional retirement thinking.
Yes, Patrice, maybe not challenging in that thinking is wrong, but just adding another layer to it. So let's visit today about retirement planning. And this is the Life and Money podcast. And I'd like to talk about the life side of it a little bit. And how to not just talk about investments in markets, but really instead how to live well after you've spent decades accumulating money and wealth. And I've been in this business for nearly 30 years now as a financial planner. I've met with hundreds, if not thousands, of people transitioning to retirement. And I've come to believe something, because I've seen it so many times firsthand, that the single biggest factor in whether your retirement is fulfilling or frustrating has almost nothing to do with the size of your investment portfolio.
In many ways, I agree with you, but this is really, you're taking a big, bold statement there and putting it right out front, my man.
Yeah. The problem is virtually all retirement planning conversations I've been a part of and seen with people is that it always revolves around just the money. How much do I need? Will I run out? Should I take Social Security? How should I invest? Those are really important questions, and they have to be dialed in correctly. The money matters a lot, and money provides security. But the people that struggle in retirement aren't those with necessarily the smallest portfolio, and having a large investment portfolio doesn't automatically create the fulfillment that people are looking for in retirement.
So what are they missing?
Really, it comes down to the quality of the relationships.
Okay.
And the question that nobody's asking in their retirement planning is, how healthy are my relationships? And by relationships, I don't mean necessarily just with your spouse, if you have one, or partner, or even with your grandkids, but in the broader scope of other people in your life.
Well, keep on going. Go ahead.
I guess, let me give you an example. I've met with a lot of people. I remember one couple in particular. They did everything right financially. They had more than enough money. They retired. Their investments are performing well. The retirement plan's working exactly as designed. But they sat down one day into their retirement, a year or so, and confessed that they didn't know what they were doing with themselves.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, they loved each other, but they had spent decades focusing on building their careers, both professionals, raising families, managing schedules. And so they weren't having a money problem, but they were having what I call a transition problem.
All right. I like the way you put that. Yeah. So what happened?
So it's just this idea that they're struggling with a life transition, this identity transition, a relationship transition. And those are the unseen struggles of what makes a fulfilling and frustrating retirement, of what makes a great retirement. It's just not money, but it's the people in your lives.
Well, face it, if you've worked most of your life, that is your identity for the most part. So when you stop working, who are you? And when you've got a spouse who's also stopped working and you look at each other and say, well, who are you? I can see how there could be some questions raised.
Yeah, and oftentimes spouses, wives in particular, have been home sometimes longer than their husbands, and they don't necessarily want their husband hanging around in the kitchen all day long. And frankly, a lot of the wives don't want to be the only social outlet for their husband.
You know, and that's a good point. We'll get to that a little bit later on too, about who has the better relationships and who has built them up over time. But there are some studies you've looked at too, right?
I'm fascinated by what's called the Harvard Study on Adult Development. Now, this is a study, Patrice, that's been going on since 1938, so 88 years.
Oh, wow.
And what the researchers have been doing since 1938, they started with teenagers, and they've tried to answer this question, what makes a great life? And they've followed these same groups of people since 1938 all the way through their adulthood and through their lives, and many, many continuous groups of people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different people. And then they started researching, studying couples. Here's what's just fascinating to me. The strongest predictor of happiness and healthy aging is the quality and the closeness of the relationships you have with other people.
It makes sense, though. That's your life.
The people, the researchers have found, the evidence is, the people that are the healthiest and happiest at age 80 had the best relationships at age 50.
Oh, my. So that's 30 years of building on those relationships.
People that were most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest and happiest at age 80. So what the research finds is that relationship satisfaction is a better predictor of healthy aging than your cholesterol levels. Think about that. That just stops me in my tracks, so to speak. I mean, who'd to think that? We measure our cholesterol, we measure our physical fitness, we measure our portfolios, but how many of us are really asking how healthy are my relationships and how many do I have in my life?
Right. And we know that women generally live longer than men. And yes, some of that is physical, but I wonder how much of that is the relationships there too.
I'm sure it makes a huge difference. The research is just fascinating. The researchers have also found that loneliness really matters.
Sure. Think about dementia and loneliness.
People that are chronically lonely experience memory decline sooner. Couples that are classified as being cold versus warm relationships experience memory decline sooner than those that rate themselves as being more satisfied in the relationship. Lonely people die younger. So, in fact, it's also fascinating. The U.S. Surgeon General has said that chronic loneliness has a mortality risk that's roughly the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's just fascinating to me. So I guess the point is people spend a tremendous amount of time focusing on their money in their retirement planning, but almost no time thinking about one of retirement's greatest risks, which is just becoming disconnected in retirement. And people are trying to retire in their early 60s oftentimes and could easily live 30 years. And so money determines if retirement is possible, but the evidence shows that the relationships in your life often determine whether or not this retirement is actually fulfilling. You need both.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about couples, because we've already kind of started that with the spouses. But let's talk about them first, and then maybe we can talk about individuals.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, clearly, the research shows that with couples that are going to feel good about the relationship, that friendship can deepen for sure. But those couples that aren't as satisfied, that distance can actually get magnified in retirement. And it's not that retirement creates those differences. It just simply gives them room to finally surface after you're settling down and you're with each other every day, away from your careers, and the kids are gone. Those things tend to surface and come out more often.
Talk about those differences. What have they found?
Well, it's often that one couple wants adventure, one wants stability, one wants to go travel, one wants to stay home with the grandkids and stay close to home. One wants more togetherness, one wants more independence. There's all kinds of differences in relationships, which are good. And everybody should have in a relationship their own sense of independence in their own life, so to speak. But where there's tension, it often comes out in retirement. And I think you've seen that in the research too, where the quote unquote gray divorces are skyrocketing, not only in the United States, but across the world. I mean, those divorces over age 60.
All right, Eric, let's talk a little bit more about friendships and the men I'm thinking of. Women, we have friendships. It's easy for us, I think, to create a friendship. But what about the men?
Us guys are notorious for not building good relationships outside of our professional identity. Oftentimes, our friendship group revolves around our work, our golf outings for work, our business travel, those colleagues, the jokes. The text at 7 p.m. might be about work or a work colleague. And men especially have not been very good about building personal relationships outside of the workforce. So retirement planning, great retirement planning, shouldn't be just about the money. It also needs to include those relationships that are going to extend beyond the workforce and give you purpose and fulfillment and a sense of community and belonging after you're out of the workforce. What so many men find is that those relationships they had throughout their professional identity, all of a sudden those doors close once they leave the building, and they're not extended, and there isn't a lot left.
So there's nothing to talk about. You don't have anything in common anymore.
Yeah.
Do hobbies fill that void? But I mean, to a point, I suppose they can. Talk to me about that.
Hobbies are huge. Obviously, hobbies are incredibly important, especially men. A lot of us need more hobbies. And we think when we retire, we're going to be fulfilled by hobbies. And we can be for a while. But the research doesn't suggest that hobbies create better health and more happiness. The research suggests that connection with people is what's important. So a lot of people will tell me, hey, we're going to be busy. I've got all these hobbies and things I want to do. But the research does not suggest that busy people age better. It suggests that connected people age better and are happier. So you can still have a packed calendar and be lonely.
That's a really interesting point. Being busy is not the same as being connected.
Right. So that's the real question. Do your hobbies create opportunities for more purpose, friendship, and belonging? And so the goal needs to be having things to do with other people. And that's what the research says increases health and happiness. And that's one area that men really lag.
Get a dog, because when you walk the dog in the neighborhood, you get to meet everybody. You know all the other dogs' names. You don't know the dog parent name, but you know the dog name.
Isn't that the truth?
Isn't it? Oh, so I meant maybe just walking in the neighborhood, even without a dog, would help.
But you know what the research says? I'll take this from the Harvard study. A couple things people can do in their retirement planning. Ask some questions, but the first question would be, what are you really going to retire to? You know, and if you're a couple, what does a Tuesday in the middle of winter look like? And being clear about that. We can go golfing. You could go golfing by yourself. But I think what people really find is golfing with other people is what creates a connection and a belonging, and the guys or the women, whichever. You could go golfing in retirement, but having this connection hobby with other people is what's key. I love to ski, Patrice, snow ski. I enjoy skiing, but what I really enjoy is the conversations on the chairlift. I enjoy the dinner and maybe drinks after skiing, the camaraderie. That's what really makes the connection and makes it fulfilling is the people you get to do it with and the experiences with other people, not just the hobby itself.
And I would think you'd have to choose a hobby where you had that chance to interact. If you do something, as you say, golf is great, but you can golf by yourself. You're not going to create that relationship.
But here's the point that for me, the Harvard study suggests that we take a social fitness test. So not a physical fitness test, but a social fitness test. And specifically, what the Harvard researchers suggest is that you make a list of the people that you could call at 2 a.m. for something. How many people can you call at 2 a.m. besides your brother or sister? And what the researchers have found is that those people that could call a handful of people at 2 a.m. for something they needed are healthier and happier. while most of us that take this test can only name one or maybe two. And so I guess that's the point. That's a place to start, especially so many of us men. We focus so hard on the numbers and the money, and we're trying to optimize every nuance of our money and our spreadsheets and the investments and the asset allocation. And just to encourage people on the life side of this to take your relationships and building relationships as serious as your investment strategy. And in your 50s, building relationships consciously that you hope to extend out for decades. All the research shows that leads to a healthier and happier retirement. So it's not just about the money. The numbers aren't the point necessarily. I'm not a relationship counselor. I'm a financial planner. Okay. So yeah, absolutely do the planning, invest wisely. The money matters. Get the money sorted. That's my job. That's what I do. That's what I help people do. But if you want a retirement that's really actually worth living, one that's full and fulfilling, it feels like something you've worked decades for, start investing more in the side of your life with the same seriousness as your investment strategy. That's my takeaway, I guess, for listeners.
That's a huge takeaway. And my question to you is, in your experience, in your opinion, when you bring this up with clients, do they look like deer in the headlights?
It's difficult because most people just want to get out of the job. They just want to be done. And they think they have hobbies. But I see so often over and over and over, and I'm going to stereotype, but it's typically men, that they jump into retirement. Because they have the money, they oftentimes retire young and retire too early. So they're focused on what they're retiring from. I get that. They know what they want to get away from, but they haven't always thought through what they're really going to retire to, and like I said earlier, what a Tuesday afternoon in the winter really looks like. And you can only play so much golf for most people. And then there's something else that needs to fill the void. And oftentimes that's what's missing is relationships with other people. And that can come in all kinds of forms. Maybe it's more clubs and pickleball and a church or all kinds of activities, but just consciously, and especially as you age, making sure your retirement plan builds in connection. And I've always asked clients a few questions as they age in retirement. And oftentimes this comes up when we're talking about a client's home and whether they should downsize or move to something different and so forth. But I always ask clients this one question: who are you going to have an ice cream cone with in the future? Who are you going to have lunch with? And that's a big thing. I mean, that's a simplistic example, but staying connected and knowing who you're going to be with during the days is a big indicator. And we talk about housing. It's related. Who's going to change your light bulbs for you? We don't want you on a ladder, and who's going to take you to the doctor. But one of the big questions is who are you going to have an ice cream cone with, or who are you going to go to lunch with? And that's often missing in a lot of people's retirement planning as they think ahead for their years.
Well, Eric, that ice cream cone question, I love that. But face it, that's where else are you going to have better conversations, right? Except with ice cream.
Yeah, that's what this is all about, better conversations. One day you're going to stop earning a living. And the question is whether you've been really building a life and not just your money. Because the goal of retirement, it's not simply to stop working. It's to create a rich life with meaning and purpose and belonging. And money funds retirement, of course, but relationships are what makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all you listeners for joining us for Better Conversations, the Life and Money podcast. Today definitely was the Life podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, share this episode with someone you care about. Because sometimes the most important retirement planning doesn't happen across a conference room table. It happens around the dinner table. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Better Conversations, the Life and Money podcast with Eric Lee from Purple Wealth. If this episode sparked something for you, follow the show so you never miss a conversation. You can learn more at www.purplewealth.com or reach out directly. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Purple Wealth is a separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Any guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Purple Wealth. Individual tax or legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.